Stormfront has been quietly weaving her whites-only web all season, and in this episode she finally caught her meal, although she wasn't the one doing the eating. Hey everyone, I'm Brent the Middleman, your middle-aged middle manager in Middle America, here today with everything you may have missed in this week's episode of The Boys. If you enjoy the video, please take a second and hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really means a lot to me to see new subscribers and likes, and my favorite thing to do is interact with people in the comments. I'd love to be your online friend and be able to continue making these videos for you. So thank you for that, and heads up for spoilers from the first 5 episodes and some of the comics. Here we go. Episode 5 of The Boys really tells a parallel story between Butcher and Homelander. Both have lost their purpose. Butcher lost his search for Becca, and Homelander lost the adoration of the public. And both are able to regain their motivation with the help of their teams. We also see a lot of other lost characters, all in different stages of finding their special purpose. Let's take a look at these other lost souls first, and we will come back to Butcher and Homelander at the end. Cool? Okay. On the superhero side, we see Queen Maeve having to deal with the consequences of Homelander outing her on television last week. Vought's creative team quickly called in Joss Whedon for a quick rewrite on Dawn of the Seven in order to exploit this revelation. In the fake movie, which, if it wasn't clear before that it is a spoof of the Justice League, then the Joss Whedon rewrite that Homelander references really brought it home. Maeve rescues a lesbian hacker who helps Maeve to really get in touch with these new feelings she is having. They also slip in a not-so-subtle jab at the Avengers Endgame super cringy girl power moment, but having Maeve, Starlight, and Stormfront come together for a girls get it done hero shot. Or as Homelander calls it, girls get it on. Maeve's real-life, on-again, off-again girlfriend, Elena, is not too happy about how Maeve is being portrayed, reminding the PR team that she is bisexual, but apparently that is too confusing for people, whereas lesbian is easier to understand. This moment with the marketing guys is so great. They want Elena to dress more like a guy because 2 girly women in a relationship is too sexy for most Americans, and people want clear gender roles like Ellen and Portia. This was just hilarious. Also, I recently rewatched season 1, and if you recall, the black marketing guy has no dick, because it was frozen and snapped off during sex with the Ice Princess superhero. Ouch. The main point of all of this, though, is getting Maeve from feeling helpless to being motivated to take down Homelander before he gets jealous and laser eyes Elena. Maeve even goes to recruit the Deep to help her by saying that she can tell the world he isn't a piece of shit, even though she is very clear that she thinks he's one. Speaking of the Deep, he is the next lost hero we are going to take a look at. Last episode, we saw the Deep, with the help of the Church of Collective, interviewing potential wives, much like Tom Cruise and the Church of Scientology are rumored to have done, just before Tom ruined Oprah's couch. Honestly, if the Boys writers were tossing around the idea for a scene with the Deep jumping up and down on Katie Couric's couch screaming that he is in love, I'm pretty sure that even they would think they went too far, and they wrote a scene where Huey ends up resting inside a whale's stomach. Anyway, the Deep is now on his road to redemption, and possibly back into the Seven, thanks to the Church of the Collective. He is doing television interviews with his new wife and starring in ridiculous marketing spots for the church. Hey guys, knock it off. There are a few things to point out from this ad for the church. In the ad, the Deep says, "Remember when the world was full of possibilities?" And it shows a beautiful, healthy forest. Then he says, "And now it is full of disappointments." And they show tornadoes and a deer that has died because of a drought. He is referencing very human feelings, but they are contrasting it with pictures of natural phenomenon and natural disasters. These are the typical scare tactics used by both sides of the political aisle, making individuals feel responsible for things in the world they have no control over, and then promising that if you trust in them that they can fix it or stop it. But nobody can stop the weather and stop animals from dying. This is why I love The Boys. They use their hyper-realistic world where superheroes exist to show us the ridiculous things that the media and politicians and celebrities in Hollywood do to try to tell us what to believe and how to think and who to believe in. But the real scary part is that all of this stuff really works on us, and that is why, despite all the crazy stuff that is happening, the world of The Boys feels very familiar. The other interesting thing about the ad is that we finally get to see Alistair Adana, the leader of the Church of the Collective. I'm interested to learn more about this guy and what his plan is. My theory is that he is looking to build his own team of superheroes and he wants to get the Deep back into the Seven to use him as the ultimate recruiting tool, with an emphasis on tool. We find out from Stormfront that she used to be a part of the church, but she tells A-Train that she left because they started letting just anyone in. Both A-Train and us, the viewers, easily pick up on what she really means by this comment, and she even takes it a step further by saying that some people are quality and some people are just garbage. Wow, the hate just oozes off of her, giving us even more evidence that she is a secret Nazi from Hitler's Germany. In fact, I picked up on something that I haven't seen anyone discuss anywhere else. When Starlight catches Stormfront talking to her mom, Stormfront tells them that her mom, Adele, wouldn't have had anything to do with all the superhero pageants Starlight's mom took her to. Starlight even annoyingly guesses Adele as Stormfront's computer password. Yeah, no trouble at all, barely an inconvenience. Anyway, the name Adele sounded suspiciously close to the name Adolph to me. Adele? Adolph? I don't think that Stormfront had real parents, much like Homelander. I believe she was raised by Vought and by Adolf Hitler. When Vought and Hitler had a falling out, I think Stormfront came with him to America and took up the name Liberty, becoming one of Vought's first superheroes. But in reality, she wasn't one of the first superheroes. I think she was Vought's very first superhero, possibly even made from his DNA and maybe even Hitler's. I also think that Stormfront and Homelander have a very interesting and horrifying connection that I will discuss towards the end of the video, so stay with me, I promise it's worth it. Since A-Train was the one getting the brunt of Stormfront's hatred, let's take a look at him next. Last episode we saw Homelander giving the speedster his walking papers and kicking him out of the Seven. To make matters worse, he is even asked to give a farewell speech in the fake movie. He rewrites the lines to try to make his leaving look more ambiguous, but he is told he doesn't have a choice, so he goes through with it. And just in case he hasn't been kicked enough this episode, well, he is a murderer, so it probably isn't close to enough. He has to deliver his lines to Homelander's stand-in. If you look closely while he's walking away, you can even see his khakis. The director asks A-Train if he should move on, or if he wants to go again. A-Train finally accepts his fate and tells the director he is ready to move on. It's not totally clear where A-Train goes from here. I could see him completely giving up running and pulling a fat Thor, diving into his depression, not exercising, and getting fat. Then Maeve and the Deep, or possibly the boys, will have to pull him out of it for his help. But I think most likely we will see him try to follow the Deep's road to redemption, which will also lead him to helping Maeve take down Homelander. In the episode, he is the one watching the Deep's Church of the Collective PSA, and he calls it bullshit. Weirdly enough, the fact that they had A-Train watching it and calling it BS is what makes me think he will race over to the church for a fresca. Speaking of fresca, and the church using it as something to offer someone to put them at ease, there's a lot of attention given to the Vietnamese crepe truck that is on the movie set. I think it was the channel Think Story that put the theory out there that this food truck may be drugging the food, on orders from Vought of course, to keep the soups compliant. This may be what the church is doing with the fresca, and it is also something that the cult in the documentary Wild Wild Country did to the groups of homeless people they brought in to grow their numbers. They drugged their food to keep them from getting violent since most of the people had a mental illness, which is a lot like our favorite super a-holes. I'm not sure I'm buying this theory, but I love the original idea, and this is a fun one. Starlight didn't have a whole lot to do in this episode other than let the camera pan down to her butt in her superhero outfit, but hey, definitely not complaining. She did find out that Stormfront is onto her about the Compound V. I have seen some other people wondering how she knew, but Starlight wasn't exactly super sneaky about things. Gecko delivered it to her right in front of Stormfront, mistake number 1. She hid the bag with the V in it in Stormfront's backpack and had to sneak it out later, mistake number 2. Her mom told Stormfront how Starlight is super mad about the Compound V in the line, mistake number 3, and she got caught sneaking around Stormfront's trailer, mistake number 4. Please list all of Starlight's other mistakes in the comments. Starlight did guess Stormfront's computer password, which is a good lesson for everyone out there to use random letters and numbers to make your passwords. The more you know. The password was Adele, which, as I explained earlier, I believe is code for Adolph. In the computer, we see a bunch of emails from Stan Edgar regarding a facility that seems to house and do testing on people with powers, and perhaps just people. Earlier in the episode, Stormfront got a call from someone at the facility who we know from the promotional materials is Lamplighter, played by Shawn Ashmore, who ironically played Iceman in the X-Men series. Man, this guy has range, right? Lamplighter, who was flipping open a, lighter, that said Titty Committee, and I wonder if the other side said Itty Bitty, and this happened to be Stormfront's old lighter. Called Stormfront and said he is concerned about a 17-year-old who he has to watch go through some terrible things, but Stormfront calls the kid a hero. If you don't remember, Lamplighter is who burned Colonel Mallory's grandkids alive, so if he is concerned about something, it must be pretty bad. From the trailers, this looks like the same facility where the bald head smasher soup is being held, and she has to be the one who popped Raynor's head in episode 1. This means Edgar and Stormfront were responsible for getting Raynor killed after she said there was a coup happening from within Vought. So what do Edgar and Stormfront want? Are they pushing the Nazi agenda and recruiting Homelander to help? Why would Edgar, a black man, want to be a part of this, unless there is more to him than we know? Speaking of Homelander, let's get to the main storyline in this episode, the parallel journeys of Butcher and Homelander. Butcher is not in a good place after Becca chose her kid over him, and he goes to a metal show to get in a fight and ultimately get beat up. In the comics, Butcher loved to get in brawls. After he goes to the grocery store, where we see a freezer owned by Vought Farms, he grabs a bag of Homelander brand peas to hold on his eye. He also looks at a bunch of other soup merch. Huey calls him 5 times until he finally picks up and tells Huey he is headed to Argentina and thanks him for being his canary. It's funny that he says Argentina because after World War II, a bunch of Nazis fled Germany for Argentina to avoid prosecution for war crimes, and it is even rumored that some live there to this day. Huey tells MM that Butcher was acting strange because he was being nice, and he tells MM that he called him his canary. MM realizes Butcher is in a bad place, and they head off to find him. Unfortunately, Frenchie is not with them because he is following Kimiko, who we find out is doing a hit for the Albanians, with Frenchie's friend with benefits acting as intermediary. Kimiko, just like she is known from the comics, rips the face off one of the Russians, who happens to be wearing a proud parent of a student at an elementary school shirt, and the boys love to drop stuff like that in. And then she goes and kills the others. Before she got there, the Russians were talking about the Broadway show Hamilton, and one says he didn't like it because Hamilton was played by a Puerto Rican who also happened to be the writer and composer of the show, but the other Russian says that it is a metaphor for the immigrant experience in America. He then says he loves Hamilton but prefers Dear Evan Hansen, a musical about a high school student with social anxiety disorder who had written a letter to himself, but it was taken by another student before that student committed suicide. Everyone thinks the boy who killed himself wrote Evan Hansen the letter, and Evan lies and uses it to get adoration from people. This is very fitting with Homelander using the adoration from the public to make himself feel better, even though he is lying about who he really is. After talking to Huey, Butcher goes to his Aunt Judy's house, and I love Aunt Judy. Maybe it's because I have an Aunt Judy, although my Aunt Judy doesn't make taffy, unfortunately. Judy is watching Butcher and Becca's dog, Terror, which is taken straight from the comics. In the comics, Terror will hump anything Butcher tells him to, and it's so great they work that into the show. We see that Butcher is afraid of growing old alone, which is what he accuses Huey of and calls him pathetic. MM and Huey find Butcher at his aunt's house, but Dark Noir finds him too. I thought this was hilarious. Dark Noir on the roof of a house in all black during the day. Not too subtle. I also love that the boys set up Home Alone traps for Black Noir, and Huey says what they are doing is just like that, except much less delightful. While they are waiting for Noir, Aunt Judy tells Huey that he looks just like Butcher's brother Lenny, who used to help keep him from going too far, just like MM said Huey does. Huey asks Judy what happened to Lenny, and she says God rest his soul. Huey says he died, how? But that's when they hear Noir setting off the traps, so Judy never actually confirms that Lenny died. This could be why a lot of people are theorizing that Noir can end up being Lenny and could look just like Huey. Here is the twist from the comic I warned you about. In the comics, Noir is a clone of Homelander that Vought made as a contingency plan just in case Homelander got out of control. But Noir gets tired of never getting to complete his mission of killing Homelander, so he starts framing Homelander for crimes. Homelander never remembers doing any of it, because he didn't, so he thinks he is going crazy. If we see this start happening, then we know that the twist is coming. But the show may be looking to do something different. The best guesses at this point are that Noir is Lenny, a clone of Huey, or a clone of Butcher. They may just be trying to get us off the path so they can go the comic route next season or in season 4, but let me know in the comments what your theories are about Noir. So, after Noir gets bombed on like the wet bandits, he throws a gas canister into the basement, forcing Butcher and everyone upstairs. Butcher locks the door, expecting to have Noir kill him, but Huey, and then Terror all rush in after Noir to help. This inspires Butcher to save himself and his friends by telling Noir he has a picture of Homelander with his son. We see that Edgar is watching through a camera on Noir, and he calls Noir's cell phone. Noir's ring is a religious hymn, as if he is being called by God, which Edgar basically is to the superheroes, especially to Noir. Edgar lets Butcher and everyone go as long as Butcher promises to never release the photos. Huey asks Butcher if he really has the pictures, and Butcher says, "Of course." But the look they exchange says that he probably doesn't. Nice bluff. Noir just turns and goes while everyone is saying their goodbyes. We hear the song Dream On by Aerosmith, a really great song and a really fitting song because it's about the passage of time and how we all grow older, so we need to live life for today because tomorrow isn't promised, so we should try to live out our dreams. Butcher decides that he is going to rescue Becca for good and use the help from his friends to do it. While Butcher was having his change of heart, Homelander was similarly hitting his lowest point before getting re-inspired. Homelander had flown into the Middle East to stop a supervillain with telekinesis, and hilariously acted fake afraid. He easily eye lasers him like Indiana Jones just shooting the wild swordsman in Raiders of the Lost Ark, makes a stink face at how the people there live, and then flies off. What he didn't realize is that he accidentally killed a young boy, and it was all caught on camera. His line of, "So they're starving, but someone there has a cell phone," is so on the nose with how the elite think about everyone else. This incident causes the people to turn against him and rally at Vought Tower, led by Congresswoman Victoria Newman. Newman is a gender swap from the comic for a character called Vic the Veep. Victor Newman became vice president and then president, but I won't spoil too much because I'm sure the show is headed here. Homelander, against everyone's advice, thinks he can solve the problem himself and flies into the rally to speak to the people. He only makes it worse by refusing to apologize, saying, "Hey, these things happen." As the crowd turns on him, we get a tropey yet awesome fantasy sequence where he eye lasers the whole crowd into a smoldering mess. I totally fell for this, but I'm happy it wasn't real because everything would be different after something like that. Instead, Homelander is forced to go to Stormfront for help. And I even wondered, is Stormfront responsible for the video getting out of Homelander killing the kid, so he would have to go to her? Hey, she seems to know everything else. Stormfront's meme team gets Homelander and his fans back, and he wants to repay her. This leads us to the craziest superhero sex scene, ever. We learn that Homelander's most powerful weapon, his eye laser, cannot hurt Stormfront, and I think this is why we got a couple of demonstrations earlier on how devastating it is. I also see this as pretty good evidence that Homelander is made from Stormfront. Either Stormfront is his mom, or he is cloned from her, which fits perfectly with Homelander's Oedipus complex, and also makes the sex scene insanely disturbing. If you don't know, Oedipus is a Greek tragedy about a man named Oedipus who falls in love with and has sex with his mother and ends up cutting out his own eyes because of how ashamed he is. It's interesting that Homelander's greatest weapon is his eyes, and Stormfront is impervious to it, essentially blinding him. Or maybe Homelander will literally be blinded at some point by Maeve and the Deep, who are after him, along with Butcher and the boys, which would be the best way to defeat Homelander. It would also make him blind like the superhero Blind Shot, whose ears he damaged because he thought he was undeserving of being on the Seven. Karma is coming for Homelander, just wait and see. Well, thank you everyone for watching today's video. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments. Once again, I'm Brent the Middleman. Thanks for watching.